Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, of course, YouTube. Not that I play favorites with my streaming platforms, but you know who you are, my favorite platform. My name is Frank Lavinia, and I am picking up the conversation from a recent talk, literally 5 minutes ago, on are the bots taking over? And in this context, these are not robots in the sense of robotics, but in the sense of chatbots. And it was a really great conversation. Um, it was a really great conversation. I think we had a couple hundred people on at the table talk. And so if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Microsoft Build is happening right now, started today. And we had a virtual session that was basically to kind of one of the things about these conferences that are great. They're not the keynotes. They're not the breakout sessions necessarily. They're the little networking booths and things that are set up where you can go to a table and talk about a particular topic and network with other people who are also interested in that topic. So one of the things that they've done is to replicate this is have various kind of tables. So this was a table talk. I was on with Veronica, I'm not going to try to Kolesnikova, Tim McAlilly, and Prashant Boyer. And we really had a great conversation about bots and what the context of them are in regards to mostly customer service. That's kind of what we thought about. And we had a great conversation. I actually connected with somebody I used to work with way back in the day. Back when that multi-monitor setup behind me was just a glimmer in my eye. We had a great conversation. A lot of interesting discussion about chatbots and ethics and things like that. One of the things I wanted to double click on was, one of the questions that came up was ultimately, should you tell people that they're talking to a bot? And my response is, I think you should be transparent that you're talking to a bot. Because one, it's the right thing to do. And two, it's just the best customer service, because if you talk to someone, the natural language processing around this has gotten better than it's ever been, but it's still not the same as talking to a person. So if you start the conversation just purely, like, let's leave ethics aside for a second, let's just park that off to the side, and we talk about just the customer experience aspect, and the customer experience aspect being this is what a bot should look like. Hey, I see Prashant is joining. Prashant, how you doing, sir? All right, we can't hear you yet.
Hey Frank, can you hear me okay
now? I can hear you. Awesome.
Right. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. I'm glad you decided to join the after party here on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. So I was just briefing the folks here who may not have been on the call, kind of what it was about. So what was your key takeaway from this talk about bots?
So my number one key takeaway is there are a lot of scenarios where enterprises are thinking of implementing the bots, and most of the scenarios were voice-based rather than, let's say, a chatbot. Like we got a lot of interest and a lot of questions. Okay, how I can use bots in my call center rather than, let's say, how I can use bot as a chatbot. So that was kind of interesting. And there are some services in Microsoft ecosystem like Azure Communication Service, which is built for that scenario.
Yeah, that was, so we have our first comment from John Wood. John Wood has an awesome YouTube channel where he talks about machine learning net, and he's here for the bot party. And there ain't no party like a bot party, because a bot party don't stop. Say that 10 times fast. No, that was interesting because I hadn't thought about the voice aspect of it. Because most of the chatbots I built, with the exception of the Alexa kind of stuff I built, and I didn't want to mention that on a Microsoft conference. Have not. I don't really take voice into account. Although what is interesting, and I wish we had more time to get into it, was the notion of, I don't know if you've heard of this, but voice UX. Have you heard of this, or hashtag VUX on Twitter, or voice UI, where you have kind of this notion of just special considerations for building out a bot. Now, we had somebody from Microsoft who was not a panelist, but I'm glad he was there as a guest because, one, he answered a lot of the Azure Voice Services questions. And he was actually at the last in-person event I attended, he was presenting there on the Flow bot. So if you've not seen this, but there's a chatbot that's based on Progressive's Flow, and you can try it on Facebook. Just do a Facebook Messenger. It feels like you're talking to her. I don't know if you've tried it, Prashant, but it's pretty cool.
I haven't played with it, but I'm definitely going to try because I heard so many good things about it during the talk, and also now I'm hearing a lot of good things about it. So definitely will try after this.
And he was actually presenting. They were doing kind of a post-project review of what it was like to work on that project and all the work that went into that. And that was a very insightful conversation. And I quoted Brad for a customer. So one of the last when I was doing field sales before I joined the MTC, I was in a customer meeting with a large hotel chain, and basically this was an interesting kind of setup because the other competitors to Lewis, which is Language Understanding Intelligence Service, were talking about, they were basically trying to court this particular customer, right? So in preparation for this, I did competitive analysis, right? So I studied Dialogflow, I studied Lex, which is the ultimately the power behind Alexa, and I basically studied it. And I was like, look, I studied all three of them. Right? You come to me, Microsoft at the time paid my mortgage, and I said I was very transparent about that. If you hear me tell you like which one's the best, obviously I'm going to say that because I actually happen to believe it. But I understand your skepticism. But here's why I think it's best. I kind of drew on the whiteboard like this one does this one does this, and he turned to me and said, "Well, basically, how do we make a bot that's a good customer experience?" And I was like, "There's no substitute for good design." It doesn't matter if you're talking chatbots, websites, cell phone apps. There's just no substitute for good design. And one of the things that this guy shared was kind of the big design document for how the Flow chatbot worked. And it was, it was massive. Like it would have, it was a big project just to encode the personality. At that point, the technology is not even kind of relevant. I will warn you though, Prashant, before you do engage the Flow chatbot on Facebook, she is very aggressive. So what'll happen is that 6 hours later, she'll be like, "Do you still want insurance? Do you still want insurance?" And then like a week later, she's like, "Do you want insurance?" And then she'll stop bothering you. So every time I would do a demo of that, because I still think that is one of the best demo technologies, she'll pop up in my feed every now and then and do that. Now what I haven't tried is that apparently they made a synthetic voice of the actress who plays Flo, so you can actually talk to Flo with voice. The voice neural network AI and sort of thing is not something I played with. It's definitely something I want to play with because I was at well, you obviously, of all people, Azure Data Fest. And so I was at Azure Data Fest Philadelphia, way back when we could do things in person. And there was a guy there who presented, he took Winston Churchill's voice.
Wow.
Out of like scripts and things like that. And he basically showed us how he made it. And there's a markup language called speech synthesis markup language, SSML, where you can basically spell out things phonetically. and kind of work with that and add all kinds of tonality and stuff like that. So he basically had, and this was Philadelphia, he gave Winston Churchill a Philadelphia accent. No joke.
Wow.
By using kind of the phonetic tags and stuff like that. It was hilarious because it was the weirdest thing because it was clearly his voice, but it clearly wasn't. It was just weird. I mean, it was as weird as it sounds, but it sounded. Did it sound artificial? Yeah, but I mean, it was close enough, and I think we're gonna get to that point where you're not going to be able to tell, which does bring up some interesting ethical concerns.
Yes.
But that was a great event. I loved it.
And I'm personally against making it sound real because there should be always, we as a human should always know whether we are talking to a bot or whether we are talking to an actual human.
Well, I didn't want to mention it on the Microsoft event. Was it was Google? Was it Duplex or half?
I don't know. I remember.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, they did launch a service where someone can just spoof for a spam call and you will see that it's coming from actual human, but it was actually machine talking, and there was a lot of backlash on that, and then they had to retract that particular feature or service.
Right, because they never made it public, and it was interesting because the people on the other end really didn't know it was a bot because it was done so well. It was except they said a lot. I don't know if you remember the demo, but basically while they were thinking, in order to keep the conversation going, it would say, if you're not familiar with this, look it up. Google Duplex, I think is what it's called, and very fascinating. But there was this thing where they would say a lot, so they'd be like, I'd like to book an appointment. Okay, when would you like to go? Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Can you do that? And they'd be like, no, we can't. But what about Saturday? And it would go, like that was the only hint that it was like not quite. Something was off about how they said and how often they said It was very, but I mean, it's still, unless you knew that it was a bot, it was kind of like diet soda, right? It was like kind of real, but not something artificial about it.
Right.
So cool. Thanks for joining the after party here, and Twitch and YouTube and whatnot. So how are you doing? How's things at Witham?
Things at Witham are good. We are busy. This is typically a busy season for Witham, especially in the advisory services because summertime, a lot of projects, or right around the springtime, a lot of big projects starts and we're busy. Like I have a couple of projects where we have a big launch, one in June and one in July. So my summer is going to be really, really busy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I want to thank you personally and publicly for setting up that table talk because you are the driving force behind it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're the driving force behind that and all the Azure Data Fests that are going on. And one thing we didn't plug on that live stream was the upcoming call for speakers, right? Is that what you were?
Yes, upcoming call for speakers and also upcoming registration for Azure Data Fest. So
cool.
It's going to be a virtual event. And this time we are planning something special where instead of inviting the speakers to give talk on any, let's say, generic topic, we have a fixed set of things that we're going to cover. And we are actually taking the help of Microsoft Learn. Like they have a nice curriculum and nice articles on how to get started with your AI journey. If you would like to learn, let's say, Azure Machine Learning.
One of those. Yeah.
If you like to use Azure Machine Learning, what are some of the resources you should follow? So we're going to focus the conference on that. So the speakers can come and give you the overview of, okay, this is how this technology works, and these are some of the additional follow-ons so that you can take your own time after the conference, go through those tutorials, and then, master the trade.
Right. No, I like that idea because if you follow the Learn curriculum, if you're intrigued by it, you can just go look it up and go to the site and just follow along and find out more. So that's a cool idea. I love how you always innovate for the community. That's good stuff. The other thing I really thought was cool was how you got Veronica in on it too and introduced us all and convinced Tim because Tim was like, I don't know. And I'm like, and I was like, maybe. And then you did a good job inspiring us all to do it. How many people were on that thing? That was like couple hundred, right?
No, more than that. So I was paying, I was, while you were checking the questions, I was looking at the attendee count, and at the peak, we had close to 320 people.
Pretty good.
Since it was a talk, some people are coming and going, but at
Mhm.
the peak, I think we have close to 320 to 340 people.
Oh, that's very nice. That's
Yep.
cool. I mean, think about this: is that before COVID, obviously
Mhm.
COVID has caused a lot of problems, but I think ordinarily you couldn't fit 320 people
Correct.
at a table. I mean, that'd be
Right.
a big table, and you couldn't have this type of discussion. I think
Right.
if there's a silver lining, I think it's how events are done. I forget what the number of people that attended Build last year, but it was way more than would fit in your
Right.
typical convention center.
And I was personally happy with the 300 count because the
Hmm.
COVID thing is going on for almost 14 months now.
Right.
And there is a thing going on called virtual conference fatigue. So I was kind of nervous. Now we are in the 14th month of pandemic. There are already a lot of virtual events happening, whether we will have enough turnout for this table talk or not. But I was actually glad to see even now after 14 months of all the virtual events, we still have like close to 300 people, or more than 300 people actually attended our table talk.
Nice.
And Build has a very targeted focus. Like most of the attendees that you get are developer focused.
Right.
It's not like Ignite where you can expect let's say 25,000 people or 30,000 people. So I was really impressed, and I was happy that okay, we have more than 300 people.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I think one of the things we're going to learn from this is that the idea that an event doesn't have to be there. I
Mhm.
mean, because ordinarily I probably would not have been able to fly to
Yes.
Seattle. I mean, particularly taking a new job, right? Like probably next year I'd be able to do it, but not this year.
Mhm.
And just the fact that we kind of on a whim have you, me, Tim, and Veronica on the call, I thought it was pretty cool. Speaking of Learn now has integrated Python notebooks. Really?
Nice.
That is very cool. And I see Tim is now in the green room, so let's get him on the screen. Tim,
Hey
how are
guys.
you,
Hey, Tim.
sir?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Awesome. You might want to pull that boom mic down because it sounds like you're far away.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's better. Happens to the best of us. Happens to the
Yes.
best of us. Look at me. I have these headphones for my phone and my laptop, my work laptop. I have this, and it's just a chaos.
Just a
So, what'd you
chaotic.
think of the session, Tim?
That was pretty good. Uh, I thought the some of the questions kind of canted off from
Hmm.
where we were trying to go, which was saying, bots taking over, and there was a lot of questions about or comments around solution developer kits for certain offshoot technologies around the overall bot family. So that was good, but I still think that it's hard to kind of keep track of
Mhm.
everything because of all of the side questions. But that's okay.
Well, with bots, like people don't realize, like bots can start opening up a can of worms. I mean, you start pulling at that thread. Like, I'm glad Brad was there because he's done some amazing implementations and like particularly around the voice stuff. Like I've never done that. That never really came up. And you know, um, I've done a number of bot implementations. Particularly, we
Yeah.
had a lot of fun with the one for Azure Data Fest where we made it rather informal. Remember, like
Oh, with your
yeah,
streaming situation,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
good. In the before times, we
The
were gonna
before,
get a cart and put all
yes,
that equipment on there and just kind of be able to push the cart around to different rooms or be much more mobile with the solution. But honestly, though, now that we're in the remote era, even though it might be winding up, I don't know. I like it. I like the like. Look at the equipment you've got with you right there, and you
hmm,
haven't left your house. You
right,
didn't have to commute. You didn't have to go to load in sodas and
hmm,
electrical cords and move tables around on a Thursday night. You didn't have to kind of hang out until Friday at 6 to kind of get what do we do with this 4 extra cases of diet Dr. Pepper? You know what I mean? You're able to you're able to say, which by the way, diet Dr. Pepper.
awesome. There's a
Yeah,
story behind that. There's a
yeah,
story
yeah.
behind that.
But I love the remote delivery. I do.
Well, I mean, just think about what was the number again? 340 people showed up to our table talk.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one big table. Like if we
Yeah.
do this in person, could you imagine?
Hey, was the room proctor, our producer? I was hitting admit all, but I think there was someone's job to do that. Like, was it
Yeah,
was it hers?
that was Kim. I
Yes.
think that was her job.
Okay, I mean, if it wasn't her job, then God bless her still, though, because I was kind of like getting them as they came in, but you couldn't really get into a stream of conscience because of the beeping from people waiting in the lobby. I was trying to get
Right,
that.
I kept, like there's 44 people in the lobby. Okay, admit them all. 44 more people. Like
I think for the next conference, Microsoft needs to put out some guidelines to the producers, like how to set up the Teams meeting so you don't have to do this. Like
That's right.
Attendees can come and join, and it's just some settings you have to do, but you have to do it beforehand.
I know. That's right.
it's still a learning experience because I remember last year's build, it was a lot more chaotic.
Oh, was
And
it?
this year, yeah, I mean, like the stream broke, and like a lot of the ignites were that way. I can say this now because I don't work from, but I remember like watching like I think it was Ignite, like it kept failing, like the stream kept failing, and then there were like a bunch of us on my old team were like, okay, no, try on this browser, try on the iPad, try on this, like try multiple things, and eventually one of them will work. But I have not seen that been a problem so far. In fact, I actually have a TV in my office where I'm streaming it on kind of the main event stage on YouTube.
Yeah. Maybe they're more ready because when Build and Inspire and Ignite hit, I mean, that was like the first go around for these big virtual events where it had to be virtual. Not like virtual for people who got stuck in a hotel room or a meeting space or couldn't travel, but they all had to be virtual last year and earlier this year. So maybe they just are ready, a little bit more ready for the glitches.
Yeah, I think they handle it a lot better. I think it's scaled a lot better. And like you have to wonder, like, what, and this is we're kind of veering off topic, but that's okay. It's my stream, so we can. But I mean, like, it's our stream. Let me phrase it that way.
There you go.
But like, what does the future hold for like in-person events? Like, I can see the value of doing in-person events, but I also can make the argument that when Prashant said to you and I, like, hey, you don't want to do this. It wasn't like, well, I got to see if I can book a flight to Seattle for me, just changing jobs, like, yeah, no, I want to go to Seattle for a week, or wherever Build would be. It would probably be Vegas or Seattle.
But you're right. Yeah, that's right. You have to rule. You can rule out travel immediately, all the logistical crap, and just go for it. I mean.
So one thing I miss about in-person conference is the talk we have with attendees or fellow speakers after the session is done or after the conference is done.
Right.
Like some of the virtual conferences are trying to address that problem by having, let's say, happy hour post-conference. But in my experience, I haven't seen like you basically won't meet the new faces that way that much.
Yeah.
Have you been to any of the virtual SQL trails?
No.
They did Carlos runs pretty good pretty tight ship there, but he came close. But it's always like that Diet Coke experience where it's not really like it's close enough. I'm sorry, Tim, to cut you off.
Yeah, I agree with John's comment. Yes, I do miss having a drink with folks post any conference or post any user group meeting.
Yeah, that is something I wonder, like when events do return, because I think eventually they will return. What are they going to look like?
It'll just depend on, like, if let's say Meetup takes away your ability to put an online link for your meetup location. That'll be a signal. I mean, obviously it's a signal that you have got to do something different if you want to keep doing virtual and you want to get some kind of portal support. But what I don't miss is, because like at my user group meetings, people clear out of there. I get some questions, from our friends, Prashant,
Yes,
I'll talk about later. And then what I don't miss is some of the little side stuff. People worrying about, hey, can I take these 5 pizzas home with me? Yeah, yes, go. You can take the pizza home with you.
You did
But,
a lot of work though. Like you went to Costco, you loaded up your car.
We
with
all
stuff, and,
did. We all
you know,
did.
it's like
The worst was going to Boston in March 1st of 2018 for their first Azure Data Fest, and I had not been to Boston before. I got a Uber ride. What did I drive? How did I drive? Anywho, I thought I Ubered to the hotel, but I thought I thought I did take a car. Anyway, oh, sorry. I got to run to my daughter. I'll stop in a bit. But I wound up having to go to Wegmans because the Boston people hadn't thought through beverages on the day of the event. Water, I think they thought through Panera coffee, but they didn't think through the nitty gritty, sodas and beverages, sodas and water. So I went to the Wegmans and the Boston MTC area.
I think it was
get
Waltham or something like that.
What is it called though?
Burlington.
Burlington. Yeah. So that was a pain in the butt. Mostly it's not too, but it's usually the Thursday night before the event that me and Prashant and remember Brian Moran, we would all meet.
It was a lot. Like, and I also remember I think it was the last Boston one we were at. I think you and I had to clear out because of there was a snowstorm coming.
There was a snowstorm coming.
Because it was like, it was Boston in like January. Like,
yes.
And
there was actually still snow on the ground from a previous event. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good for virtual for a while.
Yeah.
I did sign up for one in-person conference. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. in September.
Well, there
you go. In Washington, D.C. Convention Center.
Interesting.
And the conference is going to be for entire week. It's called Sharepoint Fest and Teams Fest, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I might check that out. There's a guy who's Patrick Bet David. He's written a number of books and things like that. He's kind of like a businessy, kind of salesy type guy, and he's having his in-person event in Vegas like over the summer, like for the first time in.
Nice.
So that'll be interesting to see how that goes over.
I think Dev Connections for like SQL Dev conferences in Orlando this fall, and I think that's in person. I saw it on Twitter, but don't quote me. I'd have to go look it up and Google it and all that crap. But Dev Connections, which was the rival conference to the PAS SQL Server conference.
That's right.
But and they would get better. Well, they would get good speakers. And I noticed that Dev Connections for a couple of years in a row would schedule themselves on the same week as PAS. Just to, I don't know. I don't have any comment about why they would do that, but it would create some problems.
Well, that's the other thing too. Organizing these things are hard because you have to pick like a weekend that's not a holiday, not a
And most of the venues, they are booked real fast. So I know I talked with the guys who organize SharePoint Fest event. And they have to book the venue 1 year in advance or sometimes 1.5 year in advance. So
especially if you're getting like the convention center, those big convention centers, like that's a job in and of itself.
Right.
Is that Dux? Is that one of his things?
Yes, Dux is going to be there.
Nice.
So as Sue Hanley, and so you will see a lot of people who are still using Microsoft 365, SharePoint, or Azure. The focus is more on collaboration in that conference. And I'm doing some sessions on bots and some on Power Platform as well.
Oh, gotcha.
Cool.
This thing that stinks about the Washington Convention Center for food. Well, I'm never running an event that's ever big enough but you have to
Correct.
Deal with the food that's there. You can't bring in anything.
That means you cannot have outside coffee as well. You have to you have to use their coffee. If you are, let's say, yes, and if you are a Starbucks fan, you have to basically go to a Starbucks cafe and then get your coffee.
Yeah, that's right. You can individually bring in a Starbucks, but you can't be bringing in a carafe of Starbucks with 500 cups. They'll get mad at that.
We were talking with one of the organizers of one of the SharePoint events. Might have been the ancestor of this event. And he was basically saying like a muffin costs like, $7 or something like that. And that was like 10 years ago. So I can only imagine, and you had to buy it from their caterer,
I bet. I went to a Microsoft 2 or 3 day conference in the spring. You know what? If it's before COVID, my memory fogs. But I know I saw Brian Moran there, and he was still at Microsoft, and I feel like it was the spring of 2019 because I remember somebody who was wound up speaking at one of our data fests saying, "Hey, I submitted a session, blah blah blah," but I forgot what I was. Oh, I forgot my train of thought because I was trying to kind of qualify when the date range was. But it was 3 days at the convention center. They gave us two $25 gift cards for food, and you have to go stand in these huge lines to get coffee or a drink.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did you go to that? Did you go to that, Prashant? It was like 2
No.
or
I
3 days.
vaguely remember this.
Was
and
it
I
in
was just like,
was
It's
it
like a
Microsoft-
Microsoft tour. It was like a
It
tour.
was at Microsoft
Yeah.
campus, like Seattle campus or Redmond
No,
campus?
it was
No, it was in
the
Ruston,
DC.
at
No, it was the
DC.
DC Convention Center.
No,
I remember this, and I just went across the street to like get a coffee at like a.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
terrible.
yeah.
It was terrible.
okay. I think you're talking about Ignite tour of Washington DC.
Yes.
Midnight tour. That's right.
Yes, I remember that, and that's the reason I didn't stand in the line because the line was huge. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna spend my time like standing in the line.
Right. I was
No,
like, you know
that-
what? $25 certificate is nice, but my time is worth more. Particularly
That's
an event
right.
because
That's
everybody's there and you want to
Right.
network. And stuff like that. I
Hey
remember.
guys, I've got a scooch, Frank.
That's fine.
My daughter's gonna come here on the bus. I track this app called Here Comes the Bus, and I can see when that bus gets in that circle, I need to be
Nice.
outside.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, thanks for joining, Tim.
Thank
And
you.
I got to
Yeah.
get going in
Thank
a few
you.
minutes for an
100%.
engineering meeting. So
Right.
thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, Jonathan. And definitely check out Azure Data Fest, the virtual version.
Bye, Mr. Vice President. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And I'll roll the end credits.
Bye.